All right. So, if there are any questions, feel free to put your hand and direct a question to any of the speakers. And if any of the other speakers would like to chip in on their question, also feel free to do that. So
Yeah. So my first question is to you. You give a very good example of the data trustee layers, and I could imagine that thing. I have a question saying, let's say the very first and basic layer is the example that you give, your medical data that you share. And let's say in the first layer, you have a variety of trustees taking your medical information to do cancer research and other things that can help improve few things. Now, my question is responsibility. So what if down the line you find out that your data about that medical layer is available for public use? Who do you held accountable for that in that layer?
I forgot actually in my implementation challenge. This one thing I forgot is so I was going to say it's all very good for data trustees to have fiduciary obligations, but if they mess up and they actually don't have any way of compensating you for the big mess they've done, what good is that? So one of the questions that's interesting is, should they hold liability insurance? And if so, who should pay for it?
Exactly.
And this is interesting because when you see, so one of the arguments I haven't developed here is, I think data trustees are the next profession. So just like doctors and lawyers, we're going to need data trustees. And if you look at how lawyers and doctors particularly are funded, some are funded through public funds, some are funded through private funds. And actually, I think very much the same to go for data trustees. There could be a case for the use of public funds to fund services for data trustees. And then you need a professional body to regulate them, entry requirements, etc.
Can I ask a follow-up about that, Sylvie? So, do you sit in between the subject and the corporation? Is that kind of the idea as a protective layer?
The data trustee, yes.
Yes. Yeah. What's the relationship then between the data trustee and the corporation who may have a lot of that data about the subject?
So basically, let's say I'm a data trustee that seeks to maximize financial returns. I have 100,000 people in my trust, like me. I go and talk to Amazon and I say, look, your terms and conditions are not compatible with the terms of my trust. Either I tell all the people in my trust to stop shopping in Amazon, or you change your terms and conditions. If you don't, then I pull all the data that pertains to the people in my trust, and I give the data to a competitor who suddenly has a job.
Awesome. The question is, how do you start that with Amazon? How do you have the conversation with Amazon about how you would like to have their information be a part of the data trust? Or do you not? Do you instead say, I've gathered up independently all of this data from a whole bunch of users, and now I'm coming to you, Amazon, and saying opt-in?
Initially, you have people. So let's say all the people in this room have joined my trust. Yeah. And so they effectively have empowered me to exercise the rights of all these people in this room. And let's say that people in this room have decided that they want to maximize financial returns. And we have terms in the trust that force me, that a trustee, to make sure that, say, that a company like Amazon cannot monetize the data they have about you guys in any way without compensating you financially. Right? Now, if I find out as a data trustee that Amazon is doing that and they're not compensating you, I can go and talk to Amazon and say, hey, this is wrong. I have to tell people here in this room to stop shopping in Amazon because it's not working for us.
For the future, I point out, I think one of the challenges is the right to erasure, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
It's not automatic that you can get the data wiped out from the Amazon system all of a sudden.
No, it's not. And so that's another thing that I hope data trustees could act as a lobbying force. Is at the moment it says Article 15 says 1 month for access requests. It's a long time. I think ultimately you could envisage almost instantaneous data access requests that are done by machine to machine. But so yeah.
My concern is that Amazon has all the data right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but absolutely. But you don't. So it depends on kind of model. I'm open-minded about. There's some trusts might try to pull as much data as they can to try and create a big database. But you don't have to.
Yeah, there might be some markets where the dynamic nature of data is more important. So you need live access to data. The old data don't matter that much anymore. It might not be the case for Amazon, but for other applications, yeah. I think also not only the right to origin, but there's also the right to object to processing. If they're relying on legitimate interest as a basis, then you can use that. It's much easier than the right to origin. That's the start.
A question there?
Yeah, just following on from that one. So to understand the data trustee, then they are, if it's this new profession, that could be the case, and it's a commercial sort of position. But is a implementation challenge going to be that if you need this paternalistic by default option, then does that not make it quite unpopular idea if for this new profession needs to be some sort of monetization for the data trustee to be doing what they do?
So I would resist the idea. For me, a profession, I mean, I don't think of doctors or lawyers as necessarily a commercial occupation. And that's why I insist on the word profession. Some people have forgotten that professions actually, why do we associate a particular responsibility with the professions? It's because, unlike experts, they are confronted with a very particular type of vulnerability. Aside from, say, when I go to my car mechanic, of course I might die if they mess up my car repair. And so that's a physical vulnerability. But when I go to my doctor and I'm told I have cancer, or I go to a lawyer and I'm accused of murder, suddenly I'm stopped from being the person I would like to become. And I think it's the same with data. That's why I make this argument, say, well, actually, data trustees will be confronted to the same kind of how to define vulnerability that doctors and lawyers are confronted with. And that means they are held to very different standards from, say, a car mechanic.
Sure. I guess the question is about how do they make ends meet? How do they get their money?
So again, there are different models. Yeah. So some trusts you can have private and public initiatives. If you have a private initiative, you might create a model that finances the work of the data trustee on the back of some kind of financial returns from some kind of monetization of data, or not. Or you can have people paying a fee to be a member of the trust. I mean, you can have also, or you can have public initiatives where actually the state decides that the data trustees need to be paid out of public.
So I guess the default one would have to be a public one, so if no one's paying for the...
Absolutely, the default one would definitely have to be public.
Sticking with data trustees, would the data trustee be responsible for maintaining contemporary data accuracy? So, for example, with health data, it really matters. Somebody was given key health 2 years ago. A year ago, they got a diagnosis of a really nasty cancer, and that matters in terms of how that data can be used. So, is the data trustee responsible for making sure that the data subjects up to date?
Absolutely, yeah. So each trust can again have different terms. So you could have trusts that are run more like collaboratives, where there's a very participatory mechanism. That means that the members of the trust have deliberative fora. That means they actually play an active role in the decisions taken by the data trustee. You can have some that are really hands-off, don't want to know too much, but then the data trustee has to make sure, just like a doctor or a lawyer keeps checking that you show you want this and that, etc. The data trustee has to say.
Hi, I love that. To hear it from the Microsoft papers. So one of the things, so at the Open Data Institute, we're currently trying to build some data trusts which are different to this. So they're not driven by data subjects as much as they're more driven by current data holders. So the current rights or the people who've got most control like that. One of the things we've learned in that work is the need for multidisciplinary teams to actually build the thing. So we've had management policy, slide here, so I've got notes, technologists, lawyers, process designers, user researchers, economists, all collaborating around that. Who's missing from that list? Who do you think, what kind of skills are required to build?
Build each trust.
Yeah, to build these things. Well, probably not in the future, because in the future it might be easier.
Yeah.
Some of the first ones. What kind of skill sets do you think?
Well, I mean, I think you named quite a lot there. I mean, you definitely need lawyers, but you don't need only lawyers. You definitely need some management-driven people. You need I see some people who have perhaps an understanding of macroeconomics, I would also think that an understanding of data governance, lawyers are not necessarily very good at that these days. So it's that's why in my view, every law school should be starting a program training future, not necessarily data trustees, but it has to be an interdisciplinary degree with computer science, law, probably some kind of business school.
One of the things we found very interesting has been how, so we deliberately built the type of team we did. We had lots of people telling us, this is a digital service. Where's your web ops person? Where's your services? And I said people were trying to pick up the models applied to organisation.
Yeah, so this is where I find the professional model quite interesting, because professions are regulated both by courts, by legislation, but also by professional body. And I like that. So that means that there's a responsibility, it's much more nimble. The professional body would have to keep deliberating as to how to best make sure that the data trustees actually keep doing the job they should be doing and adapt to the challenges that would necessarily keep cropping up. I mean, we can't
And it is apologetic, right? So in this one, so some people say data should be accredited. But in this kind of one, it's actually rather than being accredited, it's actually the trustees are professional. So there's no, in the UK, there's no stamp when I go to a hospital to say it's a good hospital. But I know that the doctor, because they're a professional doctor, I've got a higher trust in them because they're that professional.
Yeah. But it's true that initially, though, it might be that we don't have enough. We need a lot of data trustees and a robust professional body before we. So it might be that initially we need some kind of accreditation. It's possible.
Yeah, is this a concept that you see being implemented soon? Or is this something that you see being implemented quite soon, or in which time frame?
I hope so. The work that Peter is doing is really interesting. I think we need to test that model first with pilots, for sure. And I know your pilots are not involved in data subjects as such yet. Yeah, they're not driven by the needs of data subjects.
Not this way. So we're trying to get, so again, declaration is we're trying to raise funds. So we're trying to raise funds for another wave of pilots, which would be more like this.
Okay. All right.
So it's that different.
Yeah.
But more like this one. So if you think of these people-driven ones, they're more about collective action.
Yeah.
And that collective action might be about preserving my privacy. It might be workers saying, I want to collect data for a particular purpose about my employer or my profession.
Yeah.
It could be consumers saying, I want to collect data. I want to contribute to data about the financial industry to help people understand the link between mental health.
Yeah. I think we underestimate how much people actually, the common good thing, people say, oh, well, actually, a lot of people care about that. I mean, because that is the fact that at the moment it's a really frustrating thing. I have a lot of colleagues working in medical research saying, the constraints linked to the fact that consent is obtained on an individual basis, and often the conditions under which the consent was obtained mean that the data can't be correlated with other data it should be correlated to. And that means progress that could be made is not made, and lives are on the balance for a lot of people. So I think we underestimate the extent to which people might be enthusiastic about the idea of saying, if I can share my data in a way that makes medical research, say, easier to conduct, but in a way that, of course, I don't have to wake up with sweat the next morning because suddenly I've lost control of very sensitive data.
The NHS are already doing a lot of data sharing.
Yes, but not in a way that empowers
Not
people.
like this, but
and that's the problem. And we've had disasters in the past. Yeah, we've had care. What is it called? Care. Yeah.
Which is currently being repeated in Australia by the same people.
All right. Okay. Yeah. And so we need to learn lessons from that. And I don't have all the answers, but certainly I would say that I would be, for instance, very scared of any model that links the state with one data trust, because the steps between that. Once you put a lot of data in the hands of one entity, which is the state, a lot of bad things could happen.
If I agree, I think just to connect the thoughts.
Yeah.
One, to connect the economic side of the picture. So you talk about the individuals being able to ask for the reservation price, especially when I think about this type of mechanism where people get together and do some kind of boycott. They establish the conditions. You can imagine that they could run into some antitrust concerns, right? So if some individuals who are holding very key data are suddenly saying, "Oh no, you have to pay me 1,000 euros for access to this data," that could create some problems, right? So that's the question from an economic perspective. The other one that I wanted to connect to your talk is, what is the situation of the foundation that regulates everything? It seems like it's a very good point of connection with the data trust and the accreditation body, and actually, if I think about the GDPR, there are some mechanisms also to certify, adopt code of conduct to make sure that this entity lives up to certain standards. So what's the current situation of the hardware or the thinking around this?
I can answer that because it's nice and quick. So essentially, the whole ecosystem that we've built is not designed around how do you appropriately incentivize with the technology itself good behavior. Instead, it is a mechanism by which, with the technology itself, you can facilitate better, more functional behavior. And then on top of that, we have a wrapped layer of visibility, because essentially we're relying on market forces to sort of cause the kind of behavior that we want as a society. Right now, there is no such technological infrastructure layer to do that. And so market forces cannot act in this way. And so what we do is we say all the foundation's role really is to take a look at the whole thing and say, there are some red lines where you absolutely cannot do this. There are a number of things where if you do it, we're going to tell people to do it. If so, one of those examples might be if you take a whole bunch of data out of a hat and then it leaves the hat and you don't know what happens to it, we tell people that has happened, right? And before you agree to a term with an organization that does that, you are told this is what they can do. If they do that, the information is gone. You can't regulate it after that point. So.
What I was wondering, maybe we can continue later, is how you appoint the people there. What's the governance structure of the foundation? That's something perhaps
very good questions and complicated answers.
Okay.
On the accounts bit, so I think that actually giving people the ability to price their own privacy, not at a level of the individual, so you everything or nothing, but giving them the ability to discriminate also at a granular level, this problem solves itself actually. So let's imagine that I'm a money launderer, he's a drug dealer, and you have HIV or something, and that means you don't want to share your health records, but you're happy sharing your bank records and your travel records. I'm a money launderer. I'm not happy sharing my bank records, but I have fine health and I'm not smuggling drugs, so I'm happy sharing my travel records and my health records. He's the other two. So each of us are happy to share 2 of the 3 data sets. When you scale up to millions of people, having one person opt out won't affect the characteristics of the pool overall. And so by protecting people's privacy, it's very low cost once you get a reasonable scale. I can not share certain bits of information about myself, and there's still millions of people that have opted into the pool, and so there's still plenty of data. And so the point is that by starting from a position of scale, right, this is the difference between scale and scope. When Google and Facebook have exhausted the benefits of scale, adding another person to their platforms no longer allows them to improve their predictive capacity. Right, the 2 billionth whatever person doesn't make their models any better. But that's why they need to learn unique things about all of us in order to improve their predictive capacity. They need to increase the scope of their knowledge about us, which is why Google is going after your health records and Facebook is going after your bank data. Now, when you start from a position of scale and try to move into scope, it creates privacy tensions. That's why everyone is revolted by this slow encroach on our personal behaviors. They need to learn those things about us. But if you start from scope, you can increase scale and have people opt out and create data sets that otherwise wouldn't exist. That's why you think you'll drive more.
Another silly question, but if all information that are tracked, for example, for statistics purposes, are all anonymous. Is still breaking the privacy, or because all information are anonymous? We don't know.
Technically, Sylvie's the lawyer. You probably should
Yeah.
be better good at
Means,
this.
information about NHS. For example, the information can be a person has, say, a cancer, who has that age, but there are no your name, no surname. Everything is anonymous. Is still breaking your privacy?
Well, okay, I'm not an expert in that, but a lot of people have shown that sometimes anonymized data is only anonymous for so long. You can re-identify who was the person associated with the data, and it's not that difficult to do. So anonymization is not that much of a guarantee when it comes to preserving the rights of that person. And I do think that, for instance, there's nothing to stop the government from saying, no matter what trust you join, certain types of medical data are mandated, so you have to share some types of medical data, whether you like it or not. So you could have some top-down intervention that says, actually, for the sake of the greater good, whatever it is, we, the government, are going to say and you have to be particular. You have to say, well, this type of data, we are going to collect it in a way that is maximally unlikely to be traced back to the individuals, and we are going to make it compulsory, because it's not okay for you to say you don't want to share the data just because you want to maximize your financial returns.
So when I say anonymous, we are not sure that it's proper anonymous.
Well,
because it can be tracked.
that's where experts are more experts than me.
There are techniques. There are people like in actively trying to work on this issue of anonymization. So there's techniques like differential privacy that aim to look at the data set and ensure for any given user that's added a piece of record into this database how we can, to some statistical value, determine that they are private in some definition of private. So there are people who are actively working on this, and there are large companies who are already implementing various definition of privacy techniques, but it always there's just some privacy threshold that we arbitrarily set, and the research is just trying to be able to push the boundaries of where we can set that threshold and
make it more clear. Define the privacy.
Yeah.
There you go.
The short answer in GDPR is that anonymous data, if it's pseudonymous, is captured, it still counts as personal data. So if re-identification is possible, it's still captured and protected by the GDPR. But I want to highlight one thing about what anonymization does to the incentives for data sharing, right? And so this is really important in terms of the marketplace. So let's take a step through this. I fetch a copy of my health records, and I price my privacy at £10. So I'm willing to sell a copy of this information to you for £10. And you say, don't worry, Ben, I'm going to anonymize it for you. And everyone thinks this is a good thing, right? My privacy is protected. Actually, it's a terrible thing, because what it does is it disincentivizes healthy data sharing practices. And so what you have just purchased for £10 from me, you've removed information from an information good. How much would you pay for a book with the first and last pages torn out? Probably not the sticker price. So what you just paid £10 for is immediately worth only £9 in your hands. And that means you face a dilemma. Do you take a loss, a pound loss, or do you reproduce it at zero cost? Like information does, it sell 2 copies. And so probably you sell 2 copies. And what that means is there's now 3 copies of my information out there, right? And my original copy. But then there's 2 guys who have paid you £9, right? And they don't know
get profit as well.
Well, and they don't know. Well, they don't know me, and so that means information has degraded further from that information good, and so it's only worth £8 in their hands. And so they sell 2 copies, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. And so after 10 times of this exchange, right, there's been £1,024 of revenue created from the information good that I sold for £10. There's been £512 of profits made from the information good I sold for £10, and I made £10.
Okay, that's because we're talking about this process about sharing information, getting profit in this way. But what about when people do the business analytics? So basically, the business intelligence, like Google Analytics, they track information from your IP address. They know that what people look at the internet. So they get information for making business data to know how many people are visiting the web page. In this case, they are not if they are selling to other people, but they are using the data, the traffic, in order to make business. Maybe they know many people live there. So in this case, even if it's the same company that are using information because they track your internet, what you have on internet, is still the same thing. I mean, even if they don't sell to another platform, they're using the traffic, they're using the computer.
Yeah.
They're still making business
Yeah.
for say the same thing.
Yeah.
So if Facebook, you make example of Facebook, Mark is selling to another company your data, or you look on internet during the day, some information, someone pick up that a person who were living in that area is making business. It's the same thing. It's the same problem.
What do you, I don't understand.
No,
What,
the
what's
problem
the, what's
is,
the question?
no, because the problem you telling say about selling information, your data to another company they can use to make business. No, your data, your traffic.
Yeah, lots of yes. This is,
But
yeah.
even if when you're on internet, you are traffic.
Yeah.
The data that you are
Yes. You're the author of that
tracked,
information.
is
Yes.
tracked.
Yes.
So this information can be used to make business.
Yes.
So in this case,
So he's talking about actively provided data, you're talking about observed data.
and
Yes,
using
you
for
cannot
business
sell that
intelligence.
easily. That's
Eh,
true, because
they
you
don't-
can find it on
They
the
don't
internet.
sell, but they use to make business. There is no a person using a computer in that area
They can
that
use it.
that
But it's
the
never going
shops
to be as
and
accurate and as extensive as the one that has been provided voluntarily. So he's talking about
it's the same, it's the same
another
problem.
market that can be built on top of what is already out there. It's not going to replace it,
Right.
as I understand.
So the information can be used again and again and again, right? That observed data can still be used for additional use cases. So, for example, people are predicting Alzheimer's based on how
Yeah.
they scan these things, and so that information was collected not to predict Alzheimer's, it was collected to show you advertisements. But it can be used for a million different use cases. That's what non-rivalry is about. So that's why we think that putting it back in the hands of people actually incentivizes totally different use cases.
Right, guys, one or two more questions and let's close there. I can see some eyes are dropping here. So yeah, maybe Jonathan, do you want a closing question?
Do you mind talking a little bit about how and about whether in a market as fast moving as this, it's easy or difficult to track copyrights and protect IP as opposed to what it might have been when we were doing focusing music and stuff like that?
Yeah, obviously it's a lot harder today than it was back then.
Oh, we've got better tech.
But we've got better tech. Fundamentally, the problem is the same. And in fact, if it's a monitoring problem, the technology that we use to monitor has actually improved dramatically. And so the irony is that the way to solve this surveillance capitalism problem is to monitor the people who are monitoring us, hold their feet to the fire in terms of GDPR compliance. That's how you fix this governance problem.
Who watches the Watchmen?
Yeah, it's the end of the cycle there, isn't it?
Yeah.
What about the how to do the remonetization piece?
Like we said, there's different pricing strategies that purveyors of information can use in order to maximize the surplus accruing to the producer of that information good. And so versioning is one, right? Hardback versus paperback. Bundling is another. So you bundle software or different books together, but because different people will pay different things for it, and so you just combine them and you capture a bigger market share, right? I'm willing to pay £3 for one information good, and he's willing to pay £7 for another information good, right? By charging £10 for both information goods, you get both of us, right? We can't buy one individually; we can only get both. And so bundling is another strategy. So that remonetization bit is actually the really hard bit, and that requires, it's not something that really AI can solve, right? This is a human touch. This is why you still need people in this space. I think.
Okay, so is it kind of about establishing a layer to the professional economy of people whose job it is to help do this?
Yeah, exactly. So it's the same job that a music producer does.
Yeah.
Right.
Except that you can only create music in music studios. I mean, it's not true anymore. Sure. But it used to be that the music producer had the studio, and so they brought all the people in.
Same job that a publisher does.
Yeah.
Right. Very interesting. Right. So if we can give another round of applause to our speakers, thank you very much. And thanks again to everyone who came out. We're going to pass around, for those of you who stick around, just a form to give us some feedback on how you found the event, what you would like to see in future events, and just any general feedback to help us improve this event and grow this community. So thanks again to everyone who came, and we'll see you again in 2 months from now. Thank you.
So I have to shoot up another big Please do email me.
Thanks so much, Sylvie. Thank you.
Sorry, it's just
how well it's going.
Yeah.
If it's going really well, we want to use it.
Cool. Yeah.
You can, before drinking beer, during,